Peace, blessings, and enough love to everyone, and a very blessed day to everyone. And we thank you for all the founders that joined today's meeting, June 16, and we welcome you all to ONPASSIVE Globally Changing Lives Deep Dive. And we just want to start with Lerato at the top.
For us, the sky is not the limit. For us, on mountains we've been meant to take off, to break forth, to pass through the universe. On passive, a unicorn is born.
अपने लिए अब आसमान की सीमा नहीं है, ऊंचे ऊंचे पर्वतों से हम आगे बढ़ते हैं। ब्रह्मांड में अपने लिए एक सुबह नई आई, यूनिकॉर्न हम हैं बन चुके, दे रहा है दिखाई। और पैसिव मोहब्बत की एक किरण दिखाती है, और फाउंडर की हिम्मत अब बढ़ती ही जाती है।
To the top, to the top, found across the universe, seen among the stars. To the top, found across the universe, seen among the stars. To the top, found across the universe, seen among the stars. To the top, found across the universe, seen among the stars. Beams of light across the planets, rays of love I felt right up. We take off, we break forth, yeah, we're bursting through the horizon. ONPASSIVE, reading in the sky. To the top, found across the universe, seen among the stars. To the top, yeah, to the top, found across the universe, seen among the stars. To the top, found across the universe, seen among the stars. To the top, found across the universe, seen among the
Wonderful, to the top. Okay. I thank you all again for coming out to this webinar. And at this time, we're going to turn it over to the man of the hour. And we just want to thank Dr. John for taking his time out, especially as a financial advisor. Have a few doctorate in different course of studies, and we just want to thank him very much for being here at this time to help us through the financial readiness is concerned. So thank you very much, Dr. John. Really appreciate it, and I welcome you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Derek. Good evening, everybody. And Dr. Derek, thanks for actually sharing the message that the information you just gave us. Our prayers with you and your family, and just pray now that you and your family can just feel the love of this community that surrounds you from afar, and continue to lift up your sister-in-law into God's gracious hands. And same message goes to Sister Debbie, as well as anyone else in the house who may be in similar circumstances. So I'm going to start, and my name is John AJONGWEN. I hope I can pick up and get some spirits uplifted, starting from this somber note. What I'm going to do this evening is spend some time and share with you some financial readiness concepts. I hope that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, I can see my screen, but now I cannot see my screen. Charming. Okay. Right. And Dr. Derek asked me, for those of you who have been with us for the last 2 weeks and been going through a couple of back and forth discussions on just some thoughts, really to get all of us to be thinking. Why this actually came to mind for me to talk about it is because a lot of people that I have been trying to introduce ONPASSIVE to, and they've sort of been resisting or not really getting on board. Many of them think that ONPASSIVE is like you're going out there and buying shares on a company for a company that is about to be launched. So a lot of people that we know, even though we've been preaching to them, we've been trying to share with them and trying to even cajole them to come on board, a few of them actually are hanging on the fence because they're waiting that once this company launches and they see how the stock price of the company is going up, and then they'll jump in at that point and buy some stock in this ONPASSIVE. They don't understand that this is not one of those companies that you don't know who is running the business, and you come in and you buy a share and then fold your arms and hope that the board of directors and the executives are going to run it and probably give you some dividends at the end of the day. But this is actually our own business. We are going in there to get our own franchise of a business that that is not even going to be called ONPASSIVE, but it is going to be called by our names or whatever we choose to name your company. So it's a different mindset being as maybe a shareholder or an investor. And so we had like an overview a couple of weeks ago. We did a deep dive, if I call it, during one of the Nigerian webinars. Last week, we did a deep dive of a part 2 of that presentation. And then on Sunday, we did kind of a blend of this part 1 and part 2 deep dive. And what I'm going to spend most of my time today is really go back to the part 1 of that presentation. And I've added a few things. So I expect about 90% of it will be the same. And maybe 5 to 10% will be some additional things based on information that's been coming out and based on where ONPASSIVE is going. So for today, I'm going to talk about a preparation for / the end of the founder positions and what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about. So just diving in there, at the very high level, we know we have been talking, each and every one of us who is here has at least one account, and you have paid $102 or $97 plus the $5 processing charge. Once the business starts, we'll need to activate our accounts. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to get like business names for the business that we're going to own and run. And one of the other things that we need to do is that we're going to do a KYC. I know some people, they say KYC, what the heck is that? Just know your customer is an acronym. But if any of you or any of us has been involved in either having maybe a PayPal account or some of these crypto accounts, you know, or even your bank account, they want to make sure that you are the one. So we would need to actually identify that and validate that we are the ones that own the account. And we'll talk about some of the basic requirements, and then we move on to really dealing with the preparation itself. So when we talk about account activation, the way I really try to explain to people here is that what ONPASSIVE has created for us is like they've built a shop, or maybe you call it a petrol or a gas station. And ONPASSIVE is going to fill that shop up with real nice goodies. We know them because we're founders. And after launch, we need to be able to open our store so that customers can come in. In our case, those customers are going to be either people will go out there and share the business with them, or they're going to be traffic that ONPASSIVE is going to drive to your website. So we need to understand not activating your account is the same as having this nice, beautiful supermarket, but not opening the doors. The good news based on the Q&A that Ash had last Monday is that for some of us who may not be able to afford that activation fee, there will be a way for you to earn your way to activation. And Ash did explain that once we go live, some of these accounts for accounts for people who do not have the money to actually pay the activation fee will allow you to still be able to go to your website, maybe play around with some of the products that may be available for free trial. But more importantly, you should be able to go in there and put emails of people that you can then use to market your website. If you're able to self-market that website and get 3 subscriptions, then those 3 subscriptions will activate your account. So this is quite important for those of us who will be struggling to activate our accounts, or for people who have multiple accounts and may not be able to activate all of them. But just remember, once they start, even though you have access to that account, you're not going to be able to have traffic going into it. And my guess is that if there is any commission that's going to be shared, maybe you will not be able to participate because you're not fully active. But that will be a way of Ash telling us that he is not planning to leave anyone behind. For the rest of us who are actually planning to get our stores open on day 1, all we need to do is start gathering some money for the activation. We have been told it will be less than $300. So I will say just set aside $300 per account. And if at the end of the day you have some change, it's better off having change than not having anything. So that's where I would tell a lot of people, go ahead and make sure that your account is activated now. That you have the money for the activation so you can activate at the beginning. Some of us have relied on other people to be able to activate our accounts, either because we do not have credit or debit cards, or we are in locations where just the banking system has not been able to allow us to do that. And what I am just advising most of those people to start thinking about is really to go ahead, talk to the person that you may be thinking about helping you activate one or more of your accounts, and make sure that they will be able to do that. For example, you may have somebody here in the United States and you are either in Africa or in the islands, and you don't have the person has helped pay for your account. And that person may actually have a credit card which has a limit. And if that credit card has a limit and that individual is not going to be able to help you activate your account because their own accounts are going to take the total credit limit. Then even you having the cash to give them will be of no use. Therefore, it will be important to at least make sure that you talk to that individual right now. And could some of the members who are like the co-hosts help admit people coming in, please? So talking about multiple accounts, there is one other thing that I would like each and every one of us to make sure that we do. Whether you have one account or you have two accounts, this is your business. And the first business document that you have is really the proof that you have registered this business. You would need to, if you run into issues with all this transitioning of data around or whatever the reason, and you needed to access your account, there is some basic information that we need to provide to ONPASSIVE to make sure that they know it is our account. And this is what I have done for every single one of my accounts. I've gone in there and I created a spreadsheet and I put who the owner of that account is. Why do I do that? There are some of the accounts that I created for the kids or created for some other people. And for now, I just want to make sure that when it comes to time to actually pass those accounts to the individuals, I can go to my spreadsheet and actually find out who specifically that account belongs to. And then you put your email, which is absolutely critical because you want to make people know, be able to log into that account. I actually include my founder ID number, which once you go to your virtual office is directly underneath your avatar or your picture or your name. And I put down the date that I joined ONPASSIVE as well as my inviter. I started up at some point, put the name of the inviter, and then I put the email of the inviter. But with all the changes that we've been doing on names and so on, the one thing that has not changed is the email address. So if I need at some point in the future to be able to contact my inviter, maybe I cannot access my account and I want them to go raise a ticket for me, it will be a great idea to have their email. Then obviously you want to make sure that you have your ONPASSIVE password or your founder's password, and the email password that you use to go get your one-time passcode, as well as any recovery email and phone number. When you have these pieces of information in a spreadsheet, my advice to you is that you should go ahead, print that document, keep it somewhere safe, keep an electronic copy in a very safe location as well. And alongside that spreadsheet or that document which has these pieces of information, get a copy of your original invoice for your $97 that you paid to ONPASSIVE and actually save it with that file. Make sure that some trusted loved one is aware of where that information is kept. It is very important because you don't want, God forbid, something were to happen that nobody is able to find out where your business is or where the documents for the business are kept. So this is one of those preparations that we should just do right now and get it out of the way, because as far as I'm concerned, the pieces of information that are here, I don't anticipate any of them is going to change. Your email is not going to change. Your founder ID is not going to change. The date that you join ONPASSIVE will not change. And your inviter's email is not going to change. You can go play around with your other passwords and so on, but at least if you change them, please come back to this document, update it. Keep a hard copy somewhere in a safe, in a file, alongside your invoice. or keep a copy in an electronic storage. It is very, very important. This is not just something that we play around with. Then coming to the real idea about the business itself, we know that once they go live, ONPASSIVE is going to create a website for every individual unique email or account that you have. And my understanding is that they're going to propose a business name for you based on, I guess, your email. You can accept that default, or you can choose to actually go in and create some other name that you like. So again, remember, your ONPASSIVE account is not some stock or some share you're buying in a company. It's a business. And as it is a business, it is paramount that we start thinking in terms of business ownership, business setup, business structuring, and how you're going to manage your ONPASSIVE as a real business. You may choose to have employees. Depending on how you structure your business, you could end up being the employee of that business, and you may have to pay yourself an income and make sure that at the end of the year, when ONPASSIVE gives us a 1099 or whatever document they're going to give for the purposes of taxation, you can actually also then take that as income for your business, but you have a lot of business expenses that you may want to consider. For example, somebody who say you're based here in the United States, North America, and I guess that will happen into a lot of places. If you choose, say, to structure your company as a limited liability company or a corporation, you could choose to, buy your car as a company car. You could choose to actually have an office somewhere that will be your business office where you do your ONPASSIVE work. If you buy any hardware, computer, phone, the subscriptions that we're paying, those are business expenses. So you will have to be able to actually keep proper accounting of your business and be able to file your business taxes depending on how you structure that business. All of those means that instead of just thinking in terms of an employee where everything is cut off and they just give you the net amount in your bank, we are becoming a business people. And as business people, we need to start thinking about what we're doing as business individuals. So I did share this slide here the other day, just to look at those differences in mindsets using this cash flow quadrant. And most of us at the moment, we are employees. And the way we think is that we rely on somebody to hire us. That person, we clock in, clock out, they control our time, they control our income, they pay our money, and we feel very comfortable because at the end of your pay cycle, whether it's weekly or paid monthly or every 2 weeks, you know that in exchange for all your intellect and all your hard work and your time, you're gonna get some money. Now, some of us, when we get into this employee mindset type of thing, we get kind of bored, or we think we want to become our own bosses, or because you have some specialist skills in some area, can actually choose to go create your own job, become like a consultant. You control when you want to work, you can put your schedule. But then the mindset is that we still have to look at the clock, because if you choose not to go to work, at the end of the month, you're going to have problems paying your bill. The income that we get in these situations is active income, meaning that if you don't show up to work, then there's nothing paid. We are transitioning to become ONPASSIVE CEOs of our own ONPASSIVE business. And when we transition into being business owners, we're going to be using either the ONPASSIVE system to generate money. We're going to be leveraging either the system itself or other people to create the money, that the income that we're going to have. But behind that, there is a lot of freedom that we could generate, both in terms of financial and time, because ONPASSIVE is going to help us generate passive income. You'll be sleeping while AI is driving traffic to your website and closing the deals for you. And you get up in the morning and you find that maybe $5 just entered to your wallet and you didn't even have to talk to somebody. That's passive income. The difference is that we don't know how much money is going to be in your account at the end of the week or at the end of the month. We can make projections on the business based on how we see it going, but we cannot get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to have, my $2,000 or $1,000 of like you have in your regular paycheck. What that means is that when we become business people, the idea of planning, budgeting becomes even more critical, as well as record keeping. But being a business owner is a sure way of creating financial independence and financial freedom for ourselves. And that is why we are all here in ONPASSIVE and looking forward to the company launch. The fourth category is the category of the investor. Here, we again are looking at not just going and buying a stock in some company. Keep your fingers crossed that when the market crashes, as has been happening the last couple of months, you still got something left. We're talking about having your money invested in vehicles that money will be generating wealth for you while you sleep. Again, that is passive income. That though, being able to generate those type of passive dollars, or whatever currency you're using, requires a different mindset from that of an employee. And that is something that we need to start getting ready. We need to start thinking. We need to start, get some books and read. But please, please, please do not go out there and start spending money until we see where ONPASSIVE is going to land us. And then you can leverage those nice green notes and do whatever you want to do. On the left-hand side, we have the employee mindset and we work for money. And on the right side, we actually have the business mindset and either leverage the system and others to work for us, or we're looking at situations where we are actually getting our money to work for us. Another mindset that I just thought I should throw out here when it comes to this idea of transitioning us from an employee to a business mindset is really to just look at some characteristics of the people on this left-hand side of the equation that typically makes about 95% of the population, but ironically control less than 5% of the wealth. Most of us, we get our jobs from our income, or we get our income from our jobs, putting it the other way around. We tend not to have diversified portfolios. So maybe you have one retirement account. If you have any, you have a pension or something. And the truth of the story, the truth here, especially for those of us in North America, and I would expect be the same for other places, is that compared to our income, we tend to pay more taxes as a percentage. And generally, we lack the financial literacy. Most of us, if you ask the people, like, when do you plan to retire? Here, like somebody in the US, they'll just blurt without even thinking 65, because that typically is the default retirement age. The people on the other side of the equation, the business people and those that generate their income in a passive manner, which is where we are progressing to, they tend to own a lot of businesses, or what I call cash generating assets. We'll talk about that shortly. Their portfolios are hugely diversified. So I would expect that once the apples start coming, we would be involved in trying to diversify our assets and putting them And then we need to learn how to put them in the right buckets in that fourth quadrant to generate more money for ourselves. Typically, they tend to pay less in taxes. Why? Because they know how to actually avoid paying taxes. I use the word avoid, not evade, please. If you evade taxes, that's a very quick way of getting yourself to jail. But these people use the rules and they can avoid taxes by having all these business expenses and so on and so forth. And they understand how money works, and they, as well as even when they don't have the financial literacy, they are able to leverage financial professionals to help them. As a result, most of these people tend to retire by design. So they can decide that I'm going to retire at 50 or I retire at 60 and then work towards that. My wish is that as ONPASSIVE gives us the opportunity, though we can then start to plan when to retire rather than work until we can work no more. And it's like a lemon that has been squeezed and there's no more juice left in it. I talked about the idea of taxes and how these people on the left-hand side tend to spend their money. You realize that they tend to spend roughly 50% of their income on their living expenses. Typically, about 20 to 25% is spent servicing debts. And some of the time, those debts are really because we went and bought liabilities for ourselves. We'll talk about those shortly. And because we do not have control on how our money works, about a quarter of it is taken out in terms of taxes before the money even hits our paychecks. As a result, most of us end up really saving very little, if at all, or to put it in another way, by the end of the month, we typically have more month than money. And that's why we need to go back to work. On this side of the equation, guess what? Yes, they still spend about almost half of their money for living expenses, but most of these are debt-free, or they figure out if they're gonna get any debts. These debts are in what I call good debt, or they put those monies in assets which can generate them more income. And because they're able to use all the tools that are available to them as business people, they're able to write off a lot of their expenses, and as a result, they pay less taxes. That then leaves them with a bigger piece of the pie, which they can then save in vehicles that will allow them to be able to generate that passive income. And this is where we need to start opening up our minds and start learning how to divide this piece of pie in these different ways. Excuse me. So once we get to the point where the founder positions come to an end and we start to get into our own accounts, there are a couple of other small things that I need to just touch on before we go talk about the generalities or share some of the business ideas. At the moment, each and every one of us has registered with ONPASSIVE using our email or an email, which is unique. And if you have multiple accounts, you know that you have multiple emails, and each of them will translate to a unique ONPASSIVE business website for you, loaded with the business, with all the products that are available, as long as you activate those accounts. A lot of people have been confused as to what's my email, what's my OMail, and this idea that you may be able to actually have your own email. The email that you used to register for ONPASSIVE, please, please, please make sure that you keep it safe. Remember the spreadsheet that I told you there, you keep it with that email and the recovery, because that you need that to get your one-time passcode to be able to go into your virtual office or to be able to access your control panel. Keep it safe until you're told otherwise. For those of us who have been playing around with OMail as one of the products, when we go live, which we've been told is one of the products that is going to be out early, you'll be able to go to OMail through the web, through the internet without necessarily going to your virtual office. That is just going to be another email service, much better than your Gmail or your Yahoo or your Outlook. If you choose to, you can use those the OMail, and I don't see why we will not use it, but that is not going to replace the email that you have signed up and you're using to get your one-time passcode. So for multiple accounts now, some people have accounts with Gmail, they have with Yahoo, they have with Outlook. OMail is just going to be one of them, which we will love and we will use as time goes. But now let's say that I have an email that's called john@gmail or john@mail.com, whatever that mail system I'm using is. After activating my one account that I signed up with this email, ONPASSIVE is going to propose me a name, as I mentioned. Let's say I've gone out there and I decided to look for names for my business, John Digital, Ace Digital, John Tech, whatever. I did tell people to make sure that you have more than one name if you want to brand your product, your website. Why? Because when you go to actually register that business name, you may find out that someone else has taken it. Therefore, by having more than one, if I go in and I found out that they've already taken one, I can just take the next one and it'll be easier for me. So in this case, if I decided that I was going to use John Tech as my company name instead of whatever default that ONPASSIVE proposes to me, then my website could be johntech.com or johntech.ai or .net, whatever that ends up being. We have been told that once you go into this johntech.com or whatever that business name is, it is almost like a company, this is a company just like the companies that we work with. It means there that just as your company has a lot of emails for each of its employees, you will be able to create, as Asha said, a limitless number of emails for your business. For example, I may have john@johntech.com. I may have a CEO at johntech.com. I may have an admin at johntech.com. I may have a CFO at johntech.com. I could have sales at johntech.com and so on and so forth. So this is one of those things that you may have that one email, but then you want to go create some other branded emails for your business and choose to use those in place of your email that you're using now. And that would be a way to actually, if you want to share your business with somebody, you may just as well use that business name rather than use your Gmail account. Why am I sharing all this information? Because most of us, when we were born, we were programmed one way, to think about how money works or to have a certain mindset about money. And the whole purpose of this these preparatory sessions is to make sure that we can actually, somebody needs to be muted, that we can actually reprogram our minds to actually start thinking as business people. I did share a book which is called the Millionaire's Mindset, and they talk in that book about this PTFA, and the whole idea of PTFAR says that we should realize that our programming, the way that we were brought up to think about things, let's just imagine if you were brought up and all you always heard is that money is the root of all evil, or that the rich people are selfish, or that, if you were brought up to have almost like negative connotations about money, then the thoughts that you have about money would be all negative. And whenever somebody talks to you about money, the instant feelings that you have are also negative feelings, which means the way that you act when you're dealing with money is also going to tend towards the way you feel, and the results would follow. So here, Red Murray, can you mute, please? Thank you. So for us to be able to actually develop a successful financial mindset, we should know that the way that we were made to think about money, or how we have been thinking about money, is actually different. And that programming could have been by verbal actions. It could have been just seeing how somebody worked. For example, if I was growing up and I saw my parents being charitable or tithing in church religiously, chances are that I will model those behaviors. Or if I have experienced something that somebody has done great with money, I would tend to model those behaviors, and they would drive my programming. So having money from ONPASSIVE is going to do two things to us. It's either going to transform us if we can reprogram ourselves to do what we're dreaming to do, or it could amplify the old self, which could be really disastrous. I did share examples here last time of people that actually ended up with a lot of money from lottery, and they either killed themselves, they died, or they went broke after a short period of time because they got this money and they still had the old money programs in their mindsets. An example here, which was this Andrew Whitaker in 2002, who actually ended up with $319 million, chose to take the lump sum, $113 million. His ideas initially were, let me donate some to my charities, let me donate some to churches, great and good. But then jumped into buying a lot of toys, driving around the neighborhood, dishing out money, and ended up carrying more than $500,000 in a suitcase to a strip club, and somebody helped themselves with the money. But then gambling crept in, he lost money, a bounce check for $1.5 million. 5 years later, he basically went back to square one. He had squandered $113 million, or almost more than $20 million every year. This individual, 2001, got less money. Yes, he started well because he got some investors to help him. He got a lawyer and a financial advisor. But after a short space of time, I guess he was really not patient or not disciplined enough, and decided to go his own way, bought businesses that failed, bought huge mansions, bought himself Lamborghini, and even bought a Hummer for $35,000 for the daughter, bought a $1.9 million private jet. Just think of how much he was spending to just have this thing parked in a hangar somewhere. Huge. I mean, can you imagine somebody having a $30,000 plasma TV screen? Of course, he thought he had all the money. Long and short of it, a mere 12 years later, this guy died in a hospice. Money only amplified what he was. It didn't transform him. So we need to be able to transform our minds. We need to think about how to move from this employee mindset to the business mindset. We need to read, study, educate ourselves, talk to other people. The last person here, same story, 10 million Canadian dollars, bought a house, went partying, bad fashions, bad behaviors don't really just disappear overnight. After he bought himself TVs, you know, he started a business, but then because he was who he was, he got numerous run-ins with the law. He served jail times for sexual assault, and literally within a space of 7 years, this guy could not take it anymore. He killed himself in his parents' garage. There are a lot more stories like these ones, but it's not only lottery winners. We know a lot of athletes and the sports stars who will make a lot of money and they stop playing their sports, and then that money just disappears. They never ever understood the money game. They never actually had themselves financially prepared. They lacked the basic literacy, which ironically is the #1 cause of poverty worldwide. It is not really the lack of the money, but what people do with the money when they get them, which leads them to make bad decisions. So one thing that I want to just share here very briefly is this idea of let's start thinking about money to wealth. Before I jump on that, let me just throw this slide up. It's not how much money you make, but how much you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. That makes you wealthy. So the idea of being able to save is something that we need to be disciplined and consistent about, and understanding how to convert our income to wealth is something that we need to bring really down deep, not only in our brains, but in our hearts. So let me show an example here of somebody named me who makes like $150,000 a year. He doesn't understand how to invest. He doesn't understand how to budget. He's like, just, you know, spend it as it comes. And at the end of the year, there is nothing left. Another person who makes a third of that understands some of the basics of finances. And at the end of the year, the person is still prudent enough to keep about 40% of what he makes. The question is, which or who of the two of them is actually wealthy? The person that makes more money, or the person that ends up, as they say, keep more and let that more work for themselves? So when we start having our apples with ONPASSIVE, we need to be able to understand how to convert this income that will be coming in on a regular basis to wealth. Please, please, please don't think that because it's coming, it's going to just keep coming and keep coming, so I can just keep spending and spending. What we want to do is let your dollars be able to become seeds which will generate $100, and then the $100 become seeds which will generate thousands of dollars, so that the next seed that comes from ONPASSIVE just fits into that funnel, and you as an individual person becomes independently wealthy. By doing that, we would improve our own way of living, we'll improve our families, our communities, and we'll be able to go out there and help change humanity, which is really the vision of our CEO. So just thinking about the wealth income, the wealth formula, when you take your income and you subtract your lifestyle, which is all those expenses and the debts and everything, we're left with some money, and we call that a saving. Now, if you understand the wealth formula, then applying interest, making sure that you get the best interest, making sure you pay the least taxes, and that you can invest that money over time so that it compounds, it creates wealth for you. And when it comes to the idea of wealth creation, 3 things are important. You want to be able to make sure that that wealth accumulates in a positive manner and you can offset inflation. So you have to have a decent interest. You want to make sure that there is protection of that wealth while it's accumulating. So if you are in the United States today, the stock market dropped by 700 points. Somebody who had their money in their sweet stock probably lost a fair change today. You want to be able to protect that money from the gyrations of the market, and also you want to make sure that the goose that lays that golden egg is also protected. And finally, this is the important aspect about estate planning, about multi-generational wealth that most of us, we do not really understand. You don't want to accumulate all this wealth, and then when you pass away, the tax man takes 50–60% of it. You want to be able to put it in a vehicle that would be most advantageous to you. So talking about that, what I want to do is just very briefly, I'm going to accelerate a bit here, talk about when we start looking at creating this wealth, we need to fully understand what is it that we're putting our money into. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talk about assets and liabilities here. Assets are those things that would put money into your pocket. Just again, I'm trying to reprogram some of us here, so bear with me. An example of an asset could be a stock that you buy and it's giving you dividends. It could be a business that you create and is generating income for you. It could be a rental property or any real estate that you're using for investment. Liabilities are those things that will take money away from you. So if you can think about it, let's say that next week we're not working and the income from our JOB is not there. What would be able to put money into your pocket, and what is it that you're going to have to borrow to continue paying? You may have to borrow to continue paying for your house, for your boat, for your cable TV, your cell phone, expensive clothing, and some of those things. So in general, those things that would pull money out of your pocket are assets. And so when we start taking our apples from ONPASSIVE, yes, we need to go out there and get some nice little toys, you know, to upgrade our standard of living. But this category is not where you're going to build your wealth that you want to use for all those nice charities or to create generational wealth for the next generations. Two types of assets: they're tangible, the ones that we can feel and touch, and the intangible ones that would show an example. And then you can classify them as either financial or real assets, like land, like real estate, some art, or maybe some commodities, gold that you can physically touch. So what are some liabilities here? Obviously, your mortgage, car loans, student loans are liabilities. Okay, you can say that maybe we take student loans to improve our way of living. Yes, you can argue that way. But then if you have a mortgage and that mortgage is on a rental property, or let me say an income producing asset, then that is what I called the good debt when I was showing you the way the poor and the rich people have their debts. That is a good debt because you have borrowed that money in order to be able to create more wealth. And then some of the other things here, you can read them for yourself. And in terms of assets, we can add a lot more. I did throw this last one down here. Life insurances are some of those things that many of us do not understand, especially people who are in North America, and even people in other countries. There are different types of life insurance plans that enable you to actually accumulate significant amount of money and not necessarily pay taxes on that money. So those are some of the type of things that we need to start looking into. And if they fit into your category, then use them for your asset generation, because those will provide that passive income for you in the future. And then the intangibles, obviously, we talk about trademarks, domain names, copyrights. So if you create a very good domain for your business and then it becomes popular, If one day you choose to sell it, you'll be amazed how much somebody is going to want to pay upfront for it. And two things when we're building our assets is to think why you're building those assets. Is that asset meant to be something that I will need to cash out in a very short space of time? For example, I want to buy a house like in 6 months' time and I need a down payment. Will I be able to get that money quickly? So those assets, you call them a liquid assets because you can transform them to a cash equivalent in about, let's say, a week or less. And then you have those other assets that are the illiquid ones. If you went into a business with somebody and you own a 50% of a $1 million business, that's a big asset, but you cannot get up and tell your partner that you want him or her to give you your share by the end of the week. So those type of assets, if you think why you're putting them and what is the time scale that you need to actually get those assets, you make your decision as to whether you want them to be liquid or illiquid. And then when it comes to assets, we know that there's some assets that would appreciate a lot. For example, real estate, it typically appreciates. Although, I mean, if you look at in the past, we've had situations when the market has gone down, but generally they appreciate. And things like a car, they depreciate. And it may be a good idea if you have your car for business, for example, the depreciation could actually work to your advantage because you can actually write off that depreciation as a business expense. But again, you need to understand what you're getting and why you're getting it. Whatever asset you choose, please, please, please make sure that as we start building our wealth, that we're able to protect those assets from bankruptcies, from civil judgment, and even non-bankruptcy type judgments that could come against us. So that is one area of either having it as part of your estate preservation, or in some places, people will actually go out there and buy things like umbrella insurance policies to protect against some of those civil and non-bankruptcy judgments, or they may look at putting those assets in some buckets that, even when there are bankruptcy situations, they can actually still recoup some or most of them. So that is just one thing I should just throw out there, because when we understand all these ideas I just throw around, then we would also need to understand how the rich spend and grow their money, while those of us in the middle class or in the lower or poor categories, we spend our money and end up with nothing. And for that, I normally would share this concept of income, expense, asset, and liability, or how cash flows among the three different classes of the poor class. The poor are really poor in terms of literacy mindset, the middle class, and the wealthy. So what I want to share here is that when we look at those of us who have the poor literacy, financial literacy mindset, we are typically on that left side of that cash flow quadrant. We have a job. That job would create an income for us. We take that income, we pay our expenses. Most of the time, we're living probably ahead of our pay. The money is not enough. So by the end of the day, the money is gone, either because we are indisciplined or we just buy stuff with that money without really budgeting and thinking ahead. And we tend to live from paycheck to paycheck. And when that money goes, what we do is we literally go back to our job and complete the cycle. When you come to the middle class, those have a bit more money, but that money still comes primarily from a job, generate some income. They use that income to cover their expenses. There is excess left, and without really understanding some of this issue on assets and liabilities, that money tends to be used again to buy some expensive toys. And once they buy those toys, guess what? The money is gone, and then they go back to getting the job. And what this is called is really the rat race cycle that most of us just live until such a time that we just drop dead because we've worked ourselves and there's no more energy left. Now, we're moving into the category of the wealthy, where ONPASSIVE is hopefully leading us to. And this is where the cash flow changes. ONPASSIVE as our business is a huge asset that our CEO is giving us for really nothing, because the $97 that we paid is not going to buy, and it's not even going to pay for one of the ads that is shown on Burj Khalifa for 1 minute. But what that does is that the wealthy use their assets as the primary source to generate income. That income, what happens is they also use it for their expenses. They use it for their liabilities. I showed there that some of those liabilities are what they call good debts. But instead of squandering everything, what they do is the rest comes back to build more assets. And then more assets generate more income that uses to fund their hopefully expensive living. And then it gives them more assets. My hope is that those of us here in ONPASSIVE, we will actually adopt this formula where we will use the income that we're going to get from ONPASSIVE. Yes, we need to upgrade our lives. We need to dig ourselves out of some financial holes that we find ourselves either by bad decisions or by luck. And then we need to actually put a lot more of that into generating more assets to create generational wealth that we can protect, that we can pass to the next generations, and use that to actually change our financial stories from what they were before we joined ONPASSIVE. I hope this was useful. I hope it was informative. I sincerely hope that if nothing else, it actually caused you to start thinking about some things that you would do in order to be ready, so that mentally we are transformed and we're able to take advantage of this God-given opportunity that ONPASSIVE and our CEO has actually given us. Thank you very much. I'll stop here and I'll hand you back to the moderator.